Joining us for our regular Sunday sit. That's every 4:30 to 6 p.m. on Sundays. This is the third Sunday. Our third Sundays are hosted both on Zoom, for you to tune in online, or you can come join us in person at the facility we're renting out from UCOD in Rancho Mirage. Today we have Ian Challis. We have Joe Kai Blackwell leading meditation as refuge on Tuesday, 6:30 to 8 p.m. That's going to be Zoom only. Wednesdays on Zoom, we have our Just Sit, our peer-led silent meditation. That is 5:30 p.m. to 6:15 every Wednesday. And Fridays, Rule Young will be leading our loving kindness meditation. That's every Friday, 4:30 p.m. to 5:15 p.m. on Zoom. We also have a few other things going on. I did want to mention that we have a retreat planned for October 15th. It is a white privilege workshop with Arena Wiseman, and Mary will actually be joining it. It will be leading as well. One of our guiding teachers, Mary. I'm also going to be posting a couple links in our chat. Those are going to be for helping support the organization here, the facility that's helping us pay our rent, our bills, planning for the future ahead, and also for helping support our teachers who bring us this wisdom, who do a lot of work on the back end to bring this to us here today. And with that, I will lead you to.
Thank you so much, Adrian. Thank you for all of your support of this organization. Adrian is our board president and tech person right now, and so much more. And we would not be here without their work and support. So thank you so much, Adrian. And thank you for showing up in person and on Zoom. I'm really glad that you're here. And we get this opportunity to practice together once again. And that's really part of what makes makes all of this happen is the again part, practicing again and again and again, showing up for ourselves, showing up for life, showing up for each other, and being willing to do that again and again, drop by drop, is how this happens. And the Buddha described liberation as happening after a long, long, long walk out into the ocean, where there's eventually a sharp drop off. And so there's a lot of that walking where it seems like, am I really getting anywhere? Where am I going? But we just keep walking, keep moving, drop by drop, and eventually we see things really change and open up in new ways um, that are really life changing and supportive. So that's what we're here for, to look at the Buddha's teachings, to practice together. We'll engage in about half an hour of silent meditation as our first thing, our first order of business, if you want to put it that way. But just a time to really settle in. Even if we're practicing every day, we may not have the luxury of a whole half hour. And so looking at this as not something that like, oh my gosh, how am I going to do this for half an hour? But like, this is a gift that we're giving ourselves, like a whole half hour to be still and to see what's here, and not necessarily have to have it be any certain way, but just that coming back again and again, taking that step, taking that step, taking that step, with confidence that it's going to lead us somewhere good. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about metta, or loving kindness, as our talk. And so as we move into the practice, I want to just offer a little bit of metta, because teachers um, so the practice of metta as you're beginning to do your sit is really important. It's a kind of a gift that you give yourself, and the teachers that I've studied with the most closely all say, whatever you do, start your meditation practice with a little bit of metta. And if that word isn't familiar to you, it simply means loving kindness, giving yourself some, you could call it pats on the back or reassurance, but just offering yourself some goodwill and benevolence, and we'll guide you through that. It'll be just a few minutes at the beginning of the sit. But first, let's just find the posture that feels comfortable for you right now, letting go of any idea that it has to be a certain way or look a certain way. You know, most of us have given up the full lotus posture by this time in our lives. But there may still be that idea like, oh, I have to really sit up straight, or I can't lie down, or whatever it might be. But you can. You can be comfortable, and just bringing that sense of comfort and also alertness to whatever posture you choose. So feeling into that, whatever that might be for you right now. And maybe taking a few deep breaths, taking a few deep, conscious breaths is a really helpful way of bringing together mind and body and heart in this moment. This action that is so familiar and we do hundreds of thousands of times every day and is with us our entire lives, this exchange with the universe of breath. So just appreciating that for a moment, savoring it by breathing deeply, just if that's comfortable for you. And now we'll just bring in that sense of metta or loving kindness for ourselves. And so as you breathe, just see if it's possible to watch your body, watch your own body, experience your own body as something that's worthy, as something that's good and sweet, as though you were watching baby breathing or a puppy or your dog, just watching with affection. And then just offering yourself a few phrases of kindness. These are classic metta phrases. May I be safe. May I be protected. May I be happy. May I be healthy. May I take care of myself with ease. So it's not a prayer, it's just a wish of well-being that you can offer to yourself. May I be well. May I be at ease. And you can offer yourself any other phrases that you might like. And perhaps it feels good to you to offer these phrases more widely, including all beings. May all beings be safe. May all beings be well. May all beings live with ease. This is called gladdening the heart. And it helps prime us for presence, for mindfulness. So now I'll just invite us into silence and invite you to practice in whatever way feels good for you today. Maybe it's following the movement of the breath in the body. Maybe it's continuing with the phrases, and you're welcome to make up your own. Or maybe it's simply resting in awareness, just noticing whatever is predominant. It's coming back again and again to the question of, am I aware? What am I aware of? Letting go of story or commentary, but just noticing what's happening in thought, emotion, sensation. How is it changing? So those are three possible ways of practicing with the breath, staying with the breath, or using meta phrases, or resting with awareness. So we'll move into silence, and I'll ring the bell one time at the start of our still period and 3 times at the end. And just noticing where you are right now and what you're aware of. And if attention has wandered from where you wanted it to be, just bringing that sense of kindness and care to your practice. It's always okay to begin again, to come fresh to this moment with a fresh intention, and to know that this is a process, takes lots of time. And so we just begin again and again and again, waking up to this moment right now. And so coming toward the close of our silent period, and just inviting you to maybe drop in a question to contemplate for the next minute or two. And that question is, what's really important? What's really important to me? Just seeing what might bubble up from that question. What's really important to me? So, kind of an interesting question. What what really matters? What really matters to you? And not asking anyone to share, put anyone on the spot, but just curious, what kind of answers come up for us, and how it came up, and where in the body it came up, um, and where it made itself first known. Um, and if you didn't notice that, maybe noticing that right now, was there sort of a place in the body where you felt that sense of what's important, what matters, and where do I feel it? So with all the time and effort and care that we spend trying to be comfortable, and we need to do that as human beings, when our basic needs are met and when we're safe enough in this moment, I bet that what matters is not something that you can buy or something that somebody wants to sell you. What matters is likely something that's deep and sacred and probably connecting, maybe involves other people. For most of us, the spiritual path is about discerning what really, really matters and what's true. And that inevitably leads to the heart and is lit up by the heart. You could even say that the heart lights the way. Is liberation, freedom possible without love? So we're going to talk about metta today, and metta meaning loving kindness or boundless love. We'll talk more about it. But this sort of cultivation of the heart that appears in many of the world's wisdom traditions, the agape in Christianity, the chesed in Judaism, and ishq of Islam. And in Buddhist teaching, it's called metta. And the very first Dharma talk that I ever offered was on metta because I felt sort of comfortable there. It felt like a soft way into offering a talk. And it's an area of practice that I've really grown into. For me, it feels like the juice, the fuel, the why do I do this? So next week I'm going to be offering metta practices at Spirit Rock for part of the queer retreat there. And so it seemed like a really good time to reflect on my own relationship to the practice and to share a little bit what I know and believe about it. And sort of starting right there, you know, someone who is asked to teach from time to time, offering a talk really has to come from a place of caring. And the Buddha gave 5 different criteria or guidelines for people who were offering Dharma talks, and one of them is around, you know, not doing it for money. Another is speaking step by step. Another is bringing into the teaching cause and effect. And then the last 2 are the Dharma should be taught with the thought, I will speak out of compassion. And the Dharma should be taught with the thought, I will speak without hurting myself or others. So baked into every Dharma event then, you know, are these wholesome energies of kindness and compassion. And the Buddha's entire teaching career was his own compassionate expression. And we know from the ancient texts that the Buddha didn't originally intend to teach. And when he realized that it could be of benefit to do that work, he did it out of care, out of compassion. So when we see that we can act in a way that's of benefit, then we act. Sometimes it's said, love is as love does. So more on that a little later. But I say this so that we remember that this practice is expressed in the way that we are in the world. It's not just internal. And one of the texts that I go back to again and again when I'm offering talks on metta are these words by Nelson Mandela that he wrote in his book, The Long Walk to Freedom. And he says, no one is born hating another person because of the color of his skin or his background or his religion. People must learn to hate, and if they can learn to hate, they can be taught to love, for love comes more naturally to the human heart than its opposite. And that's exactly what the Buddha invited, that we can teach ourselves to love. You know, we have that seed, but we can germinate it, we can water it, we can fertilize it. We can reclaim access to the love that's naturally available within us, that we have this right, this access, this opportunity. And that it's actually essential toward cultivating wisdom, toward cultivating liberation. So sometimes we get really overbalanced on the theory side of things and all the lists and books and all of it and, you know, and the words. But the heart side is essential to this. So let's talk a little bit more about the word metta, because it is just a word, you know, it's just a pointer toward a feeling and toward an experience. So what is that experience? You know, we can call it love if we like, and that word isn't too charged for us. We can call it friendliness. We can call it open-heartedness. So we can use the term that is most helpful for us, and maybe a term from another tradition resonates more for you. Or maybe it's even wordless, and that might be better still, just something felt and known, just the warmth of the heart. So this sort of essential quality within that we can remember and exercise and strengthen, and that all the world's wisdom traditions honor, and which the Buddhist teachings explicitly invite us to cultivate and really helpfully offer some practical techniques to support that cultivation. So we're not just told to be more loving, we're given some ideas on how to do that. So, you know, we're kind of talking around unconditional love. And the teachings, the ancient teachings in Buddhism call it boundless love, love that isn't bound by or to particular conditions, existing independent of conditions. And in the teachings, it takes several forms that we'll talk about today. So the first, there's metta, which we could call unconditional love or friendliness, karuna, compassion, mudita, which is like appreciative joy, and then upekkha, which gets translated as equanimity, but you could also feel it as like steadiness. And so we talk about them separately sometimes and their techniques to develop each of these aspects, but they're also one, a framework. I look at them as a framework of wholeheartedness. So, or facets, facets of the same jewel. So we'll explore each of the four facets in a minute, but first I just want to touch on why, why is it that this is an integral part of the path? I mean, that may just make sort of intuitive sense to us, but why? There's no commandment here, thou shalt be loving or else. There's no promised land, do everything right and you'll get to experience these lovely feelings. It's not a prayer, as I mentioned, going into this, or a sense of asking for something or a praying to. It's more like an offering. It's a giving. So a mind that's full of love and joy is definitely a nice place to be. We all know that. The Buddha called it a pleasant abiding here and now. And it's also a necessary tool to see clearly, to discerning and knowing, and the whole awakening process. A mind that's inclined toward caring, toward joy, toward evenness is a mind that is also at relative ease, flexible, nimble. A mind and heart that's less clouded, less limited, less bound by mind-heart states that lead us away from what's true, from seeing clearly. And we don't have to look very far to see that, to know the truth of that. If I'm triggered by something and my mind state is one of anger or jealousy or even mild annoyance, and I'm caught in that, meaning that I'm not holding it with kindness, not really aware of it, then I'm already not seeing clearly in that moment. My heart is closing and not open to what is actually here. I'm looking at it through a filter of painful or difficult emotion. And so my response is likely going to be unconsidered, automatic, unconscious, defensive. Yeah, my teacher and friend Irina Weissman says, if it's not kind, it's not true, which is, I'm not going to unpack that but for us, but it's an interesting thing to meditate on. If it's not kind, it's not true. And then that leads to the question for me, is unkindness ever necessary? Sharp and clear words and actions may be, but always in the context of what's of true benefit to ourselves and others. What honors and lifts up each other's beauty and our each other's worth and our inherent goodness. How can I see the truth in you or me or this life, when my mind is agitated and tense and rigid? So however much wisdom we may develop, however much we may know, we can't truly be free until the heart is free too. And Bhante Gunaratana, who's a Sri Lankan monk and wonderful teacher, and has a center in West Virginia, wrote about this. Without loving friendliness, and he's talking about metta, our practice of mindfulness will never successfully break through our craving and rigid sense of self. Mindfulness, in turn, is a necessary basis for developing loving friendliness. The two are always developed together. Sometimes this is described as the two wings of liberation. So this is a really compelling statement from a very wise, experienced teacher, that developing metta, loving friendliness, is actually essential to breaking through craving and that sense that we have, that limiting sense of being separate, being disconnected. So metta, this practice tends to break down in different ways the separation that we feel into a field of caring, mutuality, understanding, connecting. And in my own practice, I would say this is because affection, care, connection, patience condition my mind in a way that's safe enough, undefended enough, vulnerable enough to look deeply. We can't look deeply when we're under attack, either from outside or within. I was thinking of an analogy for this too, and I thought of like if you had your hands cupped and you had like a baby kitten in your hands, or a duckling, or maybe like reptiles, and you have a little lizard in there, but you have some little animal, some dear being in your cupped hands, and just like observing that being, you know, the interest and care that you just know you would feel, the tenderness, the wonder, the patience you'd have, the clarity of your observation in that moment. You know, nothing there but interest and kindness. And that's the kind of wonder and care and appreciation that really juices our practice. This is the sort of loving attention that allows for clear seeing. So it's mindfulness with love, with care, with patience. That's the juice. That's the juice of it. So one of our responses as a community to COVID-19 when we went online was to start a metta practice group. And so for 2.5 years, we've met every Friday to practice metta, karuna, compassion, caring, mudita, the sympathetic or appreciative joy, and equanimity. And in the practice periods, we use phrases like the ones I shared at the beginning of the meditation, or we use visualizations or guided meditations, but different techniques to teach ourselves love, as Nelson Mandela said. So awakening, becoming aware of this framework of the heart that supports us in relation not only to ourselves, but those we share life with, and also, which so importantly supports and juices our practice. And just so you know, you're very welcome to join that group at any time to just try it on, see if you like it. It's a lovely community within this community. And there's something very nourishing in those meetings, and this meeting, and Tuesdays and Wednesdays, like any time that we come together to be still, to practice, to care. There's a great deal of juice in being together and practicing together, whether it's here in person or whether it's online or both. But priming the pump of the heart together. And regular practice changes us. It reconditions us, creates new neural pathways we know, or inclines the mind, as the Buddha might say. And I see that, you know, where my initial reaction to someone I'm having difficulty with, or even difficulty with myself, is shifting over time, shifting from annoyance, you know, mild or strong, to, oh yeah, this is what I practice for. This is what I, you know, think about a little bit each day and practice every Friday. You know, can I hold this person and myself with care? And that becomes automatic at some point, you know, to sometimes where I actually surprise myself. I'm like, oh, wow, I'm thinking that. I didn't know I thought that way, you know. I actually have goodwill to this person, and I'm willing to act as though I do. May you be well, you know. May you be at ease. May we be easy with each other in this moment. So let's look at the framework for a minute. So first we have metta, and this is, you know, this is sort of the umbrella term, and it's also practiced individually. So this is like the pure, warm, given to everything kind of light of the sun that is given to everything it encounters without preference, gift of light and warmth. And so this is really the entry place into the framework. this primal energy of unconditional love or friendliness or goodwill, whatever word works for you. And the most famous teaching of the Buddha on metta is called the Karaniya Sutta, and I want to read a bit of it. Karaniya means this is what should be done, meaning on the path to freedom. But it's also called just simply the Metta Sutta. And so if you want to look it up later, just Google Metta Sutta and it'll pop right up. And so the translation I'm reading is by Thich Nhat Hanh. And so the Buddha's talking to his monastics and teaching them about metta. And he says, this is what one contemplates. May everyone be happy and safe, and may their hearts be filled with joy. May all beings live in security and in peace, beings who are frail or strong, tall or short, big or small, invisible or visible, near or far away, already born or yet to be born. May all of them dwell in perfect tranquility. Let no one do harm to anyone. Let no one put the life of anyone in danger. Let no one out of anger or ill will wish anyone any harm. Just as a mother loves and protects her only child at the risk of her own life, cultivate boundless love to offer to all living beings in the entire cosmos. Let that boundless love pervade the whole universe, above, below, and across. Our love will know no obstacles. Our heart will be absolutely free from hatred and enmity, whether standing or walking, sitting or lying. As long as we are awake, we should maintain this mindfulness of love in our heart. This is the noblest way of living. So that is really a strong statement. So unconditional love of a good mother or a good parent for their child, yet applied to, offered to all beings without exception, universally. So taking this strongest love you can imagine, and then offering that to all beings. You know, just as though this person that I'm having difficulty with in the car rental place or wherever it is, you know, was that dear to me, that worthy, and yet in no way exceptional. So what is the world like when we look at ourselves and all beings as worthy, divine, royal, whatever word works for you? So metta is this strong, strong energy, like the warmth of the sun, like this healthy parent's love offered to all beings. And the second facet is karuna, or compassion. And I prefer the word caring, really. I think it's simpler. So when metta, this energy that we just described, encounters pain and suffering in the world, it naturally takes on the form of caring. So this sometimes gets called the quivering of the heart, but I like the quickening of the heart, because when we see a being in pain, you know, what happens? That heart energy quickens. We want the pain or the difficulty to end as quickly as possible. And often we hear that compassion is suffering with, but that isn't karuna. That's a understanding of dukkha. But karuna is that deep wish, you know, may this suffering come to an end. It's actually care. May this being be free from harm. May all beings be free from harm. And when we cultivate this aspect of the heart, we're cultivating our own commitment to abstain from all harm ourselves, to offer fearlessness. So metta, boundless love, karuna or compassion, that boundless love when it encounters pain and manifests as caring. And then we come to mudita, or appreciative joy. So this is when the boundless heart encounters joy in the world, or happiness. It manifests as more joy. So an appreciation, a celebration of the good that someone is experiencing. So to get access to that feeling, you might imagine a dog running free on a beach, if you've ever watched that happen, you know, just the the sheer joy of seeing the delight that that animal is experiencing, you know, or a child like really, really happy and laughing, you know, the heart just delights at that. It's delicious. So mudita is that lighting up of at the good that we experience and in the experience of others. And when we practice that specifically, when we really want to strengthen that, we bring those experiences to mind, and we might use phrases like, you know, may your joy continue, may your joy grow. And if we can take joy in the good fortune of others as well as our own, then as the Dalai Lama points out, you know, we have billions of chances to experience joy, to share joy, to expand our capacity to appreciate. So it's not just my joy. You know, when I want your joy just as much as I want my own, suddenly the world becomes a much more generous place, a much richer place. So then it's not so much yours or theirs or mine, his and hers. It's our joy. It's the joy in the world. And we can all appreciate that. And then we come to upekkha, which gets translated as equanimity. And I think steadiness is another good word. So if metta is like the love of a parent, then upekkha is like the love of the earth, the base, the bowl, the ground that holds the other three energies. It holds them with wisdom, patience, no matter what. So this is like the love of a wise elder, you know, who's experienced the cycles and winds of life again and again, and so cares from a place of deep acceptance, still loving, caring, and appreciating, not removed, but wise to how the world is. So to practice with equanimity is to claim our own internal balance, that felt sense that we can be with what's pleasant without, and what's difficult, without getting carried off, without getting unbalanced, without losing that connection to center. So not indifference or complacency. Doesn't mean that we don't take action when we see harm occurring. But it's a fundamental acceptance leading to peace with the fluid nature of reality. So we might, in practicing with this, you know, imagine ourselves as a mountain, you know, rooted, grounded, persisting through all the different changing weather and seasons and storms, and still remaining itself, still remaining centered and whole. And sometimes we practice with phrases, may I know life as it is, changing moment by moment, impossible to grasp or hang on to. May I be at ease with that. May I honor my own wishes for the well-being of others while knowing that I cannot live their lives for them. So we're going to explore these 4 facets starting on September 30th in the Metta group if you'd like to work with them more. But this is an introduction to this framework of the heart, this field of cultivation. So I just wanted to mention too, sometimes these are known as the Brahma Viharas, and Brahma Viharas means divine abodes, sort of places where the divine lives in us. So this practice can be really creative. You know, we're not limited in how we do this practice, and we can make up our own practices too. But the most common way that we practice is by using phrases like we used at the beginning of the meditation period. And the usual invitation is to come up with simple phrases like we used that work for you, and knowing that the phrases are just a bridge. They're not magic in and of themselves. They're not like a mantra, because it's not ultimately about words. So we just use the phrases as a support. And then we offer the phrases, these wishes, to ourselves, to a benefactor, a dear one, a neutral person, someone we don't know very well, a difficult person, and finally to all beings, and importantly to all beings. And there's always that sense of radiating outward to include everyone, everything. But where we start is up to us. So perhaps it's really easy to start with ourselves. For some of us it isn't, for some of us it isn't. And so maybe we start with a dear friend or a beloved being. And then as the feeling builds, then we include ourselves, and then we widen out from there. And we can also practice with imagery if that's more available to us. Some of us like the visuals. Perhaps the sense of sharing something that represents love with others, like light or flowers. And one of my teachers has a meditation where you're offering bowls of soup to as many people as you can, beautiful, nourishing soup. So like all of our meditation, this is a gradual process, something that we do bit by bit, like I mentioned, going into the sit. And it may be that this practice doesn't speak to you right now, and that's okay. We can start right there. Let me hold that feeling with kindness and acceptance. May I explore this practice when the time is right for me. I trust my timing. Be gentle first with yourself if you wish to be gentle with others. And Lama Yeshe, a Tibetan teacher, wrote, be gentle first with yourself if you wish to be gentle with others. So the practices will always be here when we're ready, and perhaps we haven't found the right form yet. But what we can be sure of is that liberation includes this caring heart, this happy heart, this liberated, unbounded heart. And it feels important to emphasize, if love feels like too much right now, if that's too steep of an order, can I simply welcome what's here and attend to it in a way that feels appropriate? So metta doesn't have to be grand. It can be quite simple, quite gentle. Just a simple befriending of what's here. Sometimes we express the energy of care through simply making space for what's here. And I call this a moving over practice. And I want to end the talk with just a example of that I experienced. So about a year ago, David and I were driving from New Mexico back to Palm Springs, and we stopped in Sedona, Arizona. And we visited this really beautiful Buddhist garden above the city, just a lovely place. Beautiful red rocks and pines and gorgeous blue skies. And in the center of the park was a stupa, or kind of a Buddhist memorial. And so I did some practices, took refuge, walked around the stupa a number of times. And then I sat for a while, meditating and just kind of enjoying that sense of stillness that sometimes you feel in sacred places. And I could really feel there. It was strong. Even though there were lots of people talking and tour groups and activity and all kinds of stuff happening. And after a little while sitting, I got up and I explored further, and I came upon this large and really beautiful carved Buddha image, maybe 6 or 8 feet tall, I can't remember. And there was this little bench in front, and someone was already sitting on it. It didn't really look like there was room for two. So I just kind of stood to the side and, looked at the Buddha. And then the figure on the bench scooched over just a little bit and just offered me to sit with just an opening of her hand. Just a very simple gesture, not a big wave or anything, just like a scooch and an open hand, just inviting me without words to join her. And so to join them, really, to join the Buddha and her. And so I sat down and I kind of took in this moment, the Buddha, this beautiful image, the air, my own body, and this person that I was sitting next to who had just welcomed me in. What we call a neutral person, in the metta practice. I didn't know her when we didn't speak. And I didn't take in anything more than I think she was wearing light-colored pants, had darkish hair. seemed somewhat stooped, maybe resting her hands on a cane that she had between her knees. But I felt something, I really felt my heart go out to her, go out to this neutral person that I didn't know. And I just wished her metta and compassion and joy and health and well-being. And I really, really felt it. And I felt like we were in this together, feeling it together. And I never looked over. And I don't know if she looked at me. But there we were in the Buddha's presence, in the presence of love, in the presence of each other, this field of love that we were creating together. And that's part of what makes metta so powerful, that if we want more love in the universe, that we can create it, that we have that power. So then after some time, maybe 5 or 10 minutes, I got up and I bowed and I didn't look back, but I could feel our connection. The neutral person had become the beloved through the practice of metta, through this practice. And before I left, I just took this vow, okay, let me be of benefit. And for some time after that experience, I could really still feel it vividly, and I wanted to feel it, wanted to remember that feeling. And as I remembered, I sort of focused on the love that I felt for her as though that was, so remarkable, which it is. And then I realized that it was actually her act, that simple act of just scooching over a little bit and the welcoming in the moment that she offered, that it truly touched my heart and awakened all of that love, that we could create that field together from her prompt. So love is as love does. And that is what really matters to me right now. So let's just take a moment to let the words settle in whatever way you'd like to. And sometimes people report, oh, this amazing thing happened, like I hadn't heard from this person in years and I was offering them metta and then suddenly they called. Or relationships are miraculously renewed or healed. But really, what's the miracle here is that we can bring more love into the universe. That we can offer this energy that's so needed. And that it's our right to do that. It's our right and our capacity. Okay, so thank you for your attention and your kind attention, I would say. And in the time that we have, I'd just like to see any questions or thoughts or experiences that you would like to share or ask. And that can be here in the room or on. Okay, so let's close and maybe let's just take a minute. So often we end a meeting with a dedication of merit, which is really just sharing the blessings of our time together with other beings, with all beings. And that is also another kind of offering, another form of metta. So let's just do that for a moment. So just again, like just settling into the body and breath and the sense of being with others along the path, not being alone in this moment, but actually being connected through our shared intentions for good, for peace in the world, peace in ourselves. And maybe even reflecting that at this moment we are really joined by people all over the world who are practicing in one way or another. People who are trying to experience more of this unconditional love, this unbound love. People who are responding to difficulty and violence and suffering with care, with real care. People who are delighting in the good that's being experienced as well. And people who are holding the joys and the sorrows, the ups and the downs, with wisdom, steadiness, and persistence. So may our time here together join with the blessings of countless others and be of benefit to all beings. May all beings know peace. May all beings be liberated. May all beings have love awaken and come to fullness in their hearts. So thank you again so much, and wishing you all kinds of blessings, and hope that we can practice again.